Penultimate round time in the NGK and NTK Esports Cup as the series heads its way to the UK and to Cheshire for the tight twists of Oulton Park. There is a lot to decide here. Of course, mostly that build-up into the season finale and everything that we're going to deal with there, as well as deciding the top 40 drivers that will be taking on the Nordschleife. That's to deal with in a few moments' time, though. We'll get to that as we do so. Obviously, Hugo Luis bringing us the broadcast here on Racesport TV, along with myself, Lewis McGlade, and Ewan O'Leary in the comms booth. Ewan, we're in for a lot of fun. I do like myself a little bit of Oulton Park, especially this shorter Foster's layout.
Exactly, and I think people have got the wrong idea about this circuit sometimes, especially in this type of cars. It's used very often in sort of entry-level iRacing competition, and some people think, well, Oulton Park, not great for overtaking, not great for racing, but I don't think that's necessarily true in this type of car. The Toyota GR86 is fantastic for this kind of circuit. It's just the right kind of car to fit such a short venue, and there are chances to overtake and chances to slipstream, which you may not expect, of course, and may not get in other cars.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, like I said, we're talking about, when it comes to points and stuff, this about drivers working their way through into that top 40. This is the kind of round where it's almost like a very driver-specific circuit here at Oulton Park, where if you have struggled throughout the season and maybe you're a bit further down the points, maybe you're on the cusp, maybe it's your first round jumping in. This is the kind of round where you can turn around your fortunes.
Yeah, certainly, and there's going to be a lot available over the course of the two races, of course, and plenty of opportunity even if you get the first race wrong. A full reverse grid, of course, which allows those at the back to have a chance at winning, and maybe we can see a bit of a surprise winner tonight in race 2.
Yeah, we'll take a look at the season calendar, of course. We'll remind you of where we've been. Started the season back in Zolder, then went to Aragon, Imola. That's where I jumped in for the first time this season. And saw some fantastic racing back then. Hockenheimring, Rudskogen, before we get here at Oulton Park. Sort of the penultimate round, it really is. It's the final round of the main season before things change. The format is very different for that Nürburgring race, just the single race qualifying session into a single race. Obviously not what we're dealing with here. The timetable for today, as Ewan was alluding to, includes a qualifying session and 2 races. That second race being a full reverse grid. We do have a slightly smaller grid though, so maybe it's not going to be quite as chaotic as what we've seen in previous rounds, but let's be honest, a reverse grid around here is pretty tricky at the best of times, isn't it?
Exactly, and I don't think it matters how many cars are in a race. The full reverse grid still takes its effects, of course, and so I think it's still going to be an interesting one, and one where you could see a surprise winner. The reason I mention this circuit is such a good one for racing in these types of cars because of that Imola race that you referenced. We saw a couple of great races there, especially when all the leaders were up there towards the front. There was fantastic fighting for the victory on that occasion, and on those 2 occasions, in fact, in both of the races. So that's the kind of thing I'm expecting here, because Imola's one of those circuits that people say you can't really overtake on. Well, these cars delivered around there. I'm feeling something similar here tonight as well.
Certainly so. We'll take a look at the points as well. You can see here, you might have to squint a little bit because obviously we're trying to squeeze 40 drivers onto this. Alexander Thieber, the highest placed driver, scored his best round back in the first round of the season, but still has scored some pretty decent and healthy hauls of points. Currently leads the point standings by 49 points over Vince Peters, John Ellen behind. You've got people like Garvalera who haven't been here for a couple of rounds. But really for the race part throughout the middle, a lot of these drivers are fairly safe. The important bit is to look there over on the right-hand side to where Arthur Gustens is 34 points. That is the cutoff to be inside the top 40 and to be invited to that season finale.
Yeah, and over 80 points are available on any given day here with 2 races around for one of these regular season races. So that's worth bearing in mind when you're looking towards the bottom there, although it is going to be very difficult, of course, to just come in and win 2 races. It's not the easiest thing in the world by any means. So it's worth all bearing in mind, of course. But I think the last round was one of the real defining ones in this championship. Rudskogen saw it's good racing, of course, up and down the field, but it wasn't a good day for Vince Peters, who's now quite a way off Alexander Sieb at the top of the championship, despite the fact that the 2 of them have been sort of going back and forth all season.
Yeah, I mean, Vince Peters has had effectively has been a stronger driver at various points this season, but a couple of bad rounds. Didn't go that strong at Imola. Had a couple of issues there when Alexander Thibault really was in control. And like I say, at the previous round, also has kind of created a bit of a cavity at the front of the championship. But a round like this, maybe you can turn that kind of stuff around. Let's talk a little bit about Oulton Park though, and the circuit itself. I mean, you were saying about the possibilities to overtake round here. Again, a reminder, it is the shorter Foster's layout, so it doesn't come down this end of the circuit. But it's a fun track.
It is, and it's sort of gives you that cut through, of course, gives you those shorter lap times, makes you sort of repeat a little bit more often. But I think what it really does is provide you with some good long straights to actually draft off of one another. I know that you may get a few more at the Grand Prix circuit, but that may feel a little bit too long for cars of this speed. So glad that we've got this layout, and we'll see plenty of racing up and down the field for sure as a result. It'll be fascinating to see how the drivers sort of deal with going side by side through Druids, which I can see happening quite a lot at the penultimate corner, maybe into Lodge corner as well. There'll be some moves at turn one. Pretty much everywhere is an overtaking opportunity when the cars are as raceable as these.
I took my first ever proper sim racing esports pole position around this layout before I got absolutely battered off the road by Robert Wiesenmuller. Thank you very much. Now, who wants to hear two commentators waffle about this circuit when, as much as she's not here, Patricia has prepared a track guide around here. So let's go and hear what someone who actually knows what they're talking about, drivers around here, and show us what's up.
Hi guys, my name is Patrizia Stelizana and I'm a professional race car driver and also your co-commentator for this year's NGK NTK ESPORTS Cup. We are right now at Oulton Park for the qualifier race finale. Let me try and give you a quick show around of this very short but sweet track. So once again we are getting started on the last corner before the straight. It's pretty right-handed, as I said, short, so we try and minimize the meters spent not only in the corners but also on the straight here. First corner we give it a quick brake, downshift into third gear, cut as much as we can on the inside and take the AstroTurf at the exit with us as much as we can, obviously within the track limits. Here for this quick left-hander we don't brake, we carry as much speed as we can, downshift into third, downshift in the second between the corners and into first before the chicane. Cut as much as we can, come as close to the tires as we can to prepare for this right-hander where we carry as much speed into it as possible and just send it and use the track at the exit of the corner. Now we're coming to a short straight again before we come into this double right-hander. Give it a quick brake, turn in, make it a late apex, downshift into third, and also here late apex means turn in quite late and then only come to the curb where the red and white lines are. For the last corner we are downshifting into second and preparing the exit because we are coming back onto the straight already. And that is it, just a little bit over a minute. I hope you guys enjoyed this very short but fine track. I'm looking forward to the race and I'm very excited to see who will make it to the grand finale at the Nordschleife.
Obviously, thank you there to Patricia for showing us around. It's about a minute and 9 seconds, minute and 10, depending on what your speed is around here. Very, very short session. Now, in a moment, we'll be heading into qualifying gear around here. We'll see them really test the limits of the circuit. It's a 10-minute session, but they get a maximum of 4 laps. Now, back in places like Imola, for example, the circuit's quite long. We actually saw them, it was more about time in that session, whereas this, you will absolutely be able to do all 4 of your laps. It depends on how you want to do them, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really see the point as a driver personally in waiting around for going out there on the circuit and getting your laps in. I think you might as well just go out there straight away and do it at your own pace. But it's going to be relatively important. The thing with qualifying in this series, I find that it's less about the fact that you need the track position because you're going to struggle to overtake. I think that's less of the problem. It's more the further you are forward, the less risk there is that you get caught behind something happening on the opening lap. It's not unimaginable that an incident can happen in front of you that you just get caught up in, and you want to really minimise that risk as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. It's I think keeping out of trouble here is going to be very, very important. But this is the whole thing with this championship. It's why I actually really like this format. Is that even you can qualify as well as you want and blah blah blah. You're going to be involved in the trouble at some point because of the full reverse grid race that we're dealing with in the second one. So there's a lot to deal with in this one. But I don't know. For me, if I'm qualifying, I want to go out early and I want to do all 4 laps in one whole stint.
Yeah, in an ideal world, I think that is the way to go, and a lot of drivers do benefit actually from getting that sort of wind up of times. Don't particularly like the one-shot qualifying that has become very popular in recent times. Just winding it up over 4 laps seems to be more beneficial for them. But if there is a window where the tyres could be better, maybe on lap 2, let's say, they can sort of split it up. But that's the advantage of being at a circuit like this one. If you do think that your peak tyre performance is on lap 2 of a flying run, then maybe that's the way to go, and maybe that's how you get your best qualifying performance around here. Yeah,
indeed. It's normally with a car like this, you're normally talking. Your first lap's not going to be the fastest. It will be the second or third. But the second, third and fourth will all be of relatively equal pace. So if you don't get it out on that second lap, it's not that big of a deal because you've got laps 3 and 4. One big problem around here is, generally speaking, is track limits. Now, I will say, because we're running the Foster's layout, there are a couple of corners where awkward track limits violations aren't quite as prevalent. The run through Cascades, when you go through the left-hander, and it takes you out basically along the little stretch down to the hairpin. Like that corner was always brutal for track limits. I think it's more just T1. You have to be very, very mindful here, and probably the inside of Lodge corner, that last turn.
Yeah, I think turn 1's the really one that I'd have my focus on if I was qualifying around here. You see drivers in real life and in sim just running it out so far to the left-hand side on the AstroTurf on the outside there, and it makes you think, oh, maybe I can go out there and use all of the road, but you can't, of course, and indeed more can go over the white lines. You've got to be careful and keep yourself in check through there, and I guess the helpful thing is that it's at the start of the lap, so you can sort of regroup immediately and then come back around again and start again. But nevertheless, it is a difficult corner to get right and go quickly through. It's not one that's going to catch you out in terms of getting you off the road, I wouldn't have thought, but it is difficult to master in terms of perfecting your qualifying lap.
Yeah, we're just a few moments away, by the way, from going into the qualifying session. Just wrapping things up in the practice session, which they're presently in. I will tell you, Patrick Thompson is the one topping the session at the moment with a 109.254. I think pretty much the majority of the grid, at least the top 11 or so, are all separated by 1 second. We are expecting some tight margins in this qualifying session, which is it's fun. That's what we all want to see.
Yeah, it's good news, and that's what's going to keep everyone close together. You don't necessarily need to be right on the pace of the driver in front of you. If you're just in the draft and you can get pulled along over the course of the race, then you will be in the conversation for whatever position that may be. So that's what you've got to remember here, and so to see those times so close here in just practice is very encouraging indeed. The thing I find interesting, especially about that track guide there that we just saw, Patricia, was the fact that we're using the Knickerbrook chicane even though we're going through the Foster's layout. Now, I'm not sure about your experiences with this circuit, but certainly with mine, I've never done this layout and done the chicane at the same time. I've always just bombed straight through because it's allowed. I'm not cheating because that's the way it goes. And you just sort of avoid the chicane, just discount it, and it sort of gives you this really long flat outrun. And in a car like this, it's almost like a straight right from that at the sharper point of the right hander right the way up to Druids, really, at the top of the hill there. So it's quite interesting to note that we're also adding a chicane in.
Yeah, typically speaking, if you run the Foster's layout, we actually skip that Knickerbrook chicane, as you're saying. I mean, pretty much every time that I've seen it, you run basically, as you can see on the screen right now, you actually come down what is furthest right, you follow what the normal road would be, and then you head up Clay Hill and over the top. And yeah, that's fairly normal. That chicane, I wouldn't say it's going to add an overtaking opportunity. It's more about setting you up going into Druids, which, by the way, in my opinion, is one of the best corners in British motorsport. Absolutely love Druids.
Certainly better than Druids at Brands Hatch, that's for sure.
Druids at Brands Hatch sucks.
Not to be confused, but there is one clear winner there. Yeah, it might sort of open up a chance, but I actually think it could close one because of what I was saying about the slipstream, that sort of long, flat-out run up the hill there. Does it take one away? I mean, we'll have to see how the racing actually goes, because as I say, I haven't actually driven a race using this chicane and the Foster's layout, only using the Foster's layout, which misses out the chicane, of course, and I found that it was very helpful to use that sort of long flat-out run to stay in the slipstream. So we'll see if it's the same here or whether it might make very little difference.
Practice is over. Qualifying is ready to begin. Very quickly, without looking at live timing, you're not allowed to. How many drivers do you think were within 0.2 of a second at the front of the field?
Were in or will be, did you say?
Were within.
I'm going to go with 6.
More.
Oh, wow. 10?
8.
Okay, not that many.
8. No, yeah, it's all right. If you just split the difference, it would have been fine. Yeah, 8 drivers within 0.2 of a second, 4 within 1. It was a tight practice session, and we're expecting very much the same things in this qualifying session. Of course, a lot of drivers going out, a lot of drivers focusing on their chances of potentially taking a final, their final win of the main season. Obviously, the likes of Alexander Thieber, the likes of Vince Peters, the top 2 in the championship. Who's going to come out on top between the pair of those, or if someone else might sneak his way through. The driver we're looking at right now is the man himself, Alexander Thieber.
Yeah, just standing himself up right now for a lap. As you were saying earlier on, I've certainly found it in these cars and in this specification of or class of cars that building yourself up over a number of laps is a better way of going, and your first lap is never going to be your best one. We'll see if anyone proves us wrong on this occasion around Oulton Park, but certainly not expecting this time to be the pole time for Thieber as he begins his lap here. Vince Peters out there as well, of course. In fact, almost everybody in the session out there. Unfortunately, not with Michael Huff-Lidderson, who's been having server issues all day and I think won't be taking part in tonight's race.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Sometimes, the connection does become a little bit problematic as we see down into the Knickerbrook area, the Knickerbrook chicane, coming onto, or shortcutting rather, as the Foster's out, because I think he might have run a little bit too wide going through T1. You can, definitely is bail from the lap. You can run. I think it's generally speaking, if you're 2 wheels on that curve, you might be all right. This is obviously a circuit which has the old, if I remember correctly, the older iRacing track limit excursions model, which was more about the center point of the car and how you're running over that, and it was all very confusing and stuff. And around here, I distinctly remember almost ripping my wheel off of my desk and throwing it straight out the window at various points, because it can be very frustrating. But I think that was genuinely just a little bit too wide from Thieber. First qualifying lap coming in from Daniel Muth, which is a 109.774. It's about 3 or 4 tenths away where we're expecting the pole time to be. Muth, by the way, was second in practice.
Yeah, up there, and has been throughout the season as well. 7th in the point standings at the moment, and that's despite missing a round. You don't get a drop round in this series, so he won't be protected by that, and it will have to come back from that, overcome that, of course, in what is quite a congested point of the championship. Actually, incidentally, he's only 18 points away from 5th position, a couple of places ahead, and that's really not very many points when you consider there are over 80 available on any given day. This is on board now in this chicane again, and that's sort of what I was mentioning there. You can sort of turning it into one whole turn through the right-hander. I'm going to call turn 3 and then into 4 for the sort of chicane, if you like, double apex right-hander, sort of make it into one smooth corner, if you like, and then open up that left-hander for a good exit up the hill here.
Coming through, Druids committing, going for that second apex, really. You can overcommit through the first part of it. It's not too big of a deal as long as you bring it back towards that second apex and the run down into Lodge Corner, obviously up and over the many, many bumps. As you run down there, you kind of think, this circuit is narrow. The fact that they get, British GT cars around here going too wide down into there, making some big overtakes. Of course, my neck of the woods as well with Oulton Park in the GB3 Championship back in a couple of weeks' time. If that's where I'm going to be, hopefully in better condition than when you saw me at Oulton Park last.
I'm surprised you're even mentioning it, but yes, that's true. And who knows what the weather's going to be doing on that day as well, because it's prime springtime here in the UK, always on the same weekend of the year, of course, and it's very temperamental in terms of what you can see. Thankfully, less so here today in iRacing, but in real life, you don't know what you're going to get.
No, indeed. And as to talk of weather in iRacing, obviously, yes, we've had tempests, we've had the weather has been added, rain has been added. It is active in this session. However, no rain is forecast at present. Vince Peters up towards the line and moves himself up the order, but nowhere near that whopping lap time from Alexander Tiber, a 109.270, the fastest lap when you account for practice and, of course, for qualifying. So he is at the top of the session now by 0.3 of a second. Daniel Muth moves up in the second. John Ellen now moves up in the second spot. Going to see plenty of chops and changes, but they're already, some of these drivers heading basically onto their final lap of the session. John Ellen has finished with the session as Bilicki moves up in the third.
Yeah, Ellen was way too wide out of turn one there. We just saw him go through, and that was never, ever going to count for him. So he drops back to the pit lane. At the best, a front row start for him. I think Daniel Muth will look to improve here, and I wonder whether Alex Tiber is actually going to be able to improve, to be honest, because his lap time there is so much better than the rest of the field. Makes you wonder that maybe even he is going to struggle to beat his own lap time there and go quicker.
Well, previous lap time for him was a 0.3, which obviously is great. It would have been good enough for the pole time, but the fact that he's done a 0.2, he's on his final lap at the moment. We're looking at Daniel Muth now coming down into that final sector. Previous lap time for him was a 109.547. Backed off of lap 2. All 4 of them have counted in the session thus far as Alessio Bender goes up in the 5th position. Is there going to be an improvement from Muth as he crosses the line? It is not. A 109.779.
Yeah, it stays on the second row for the moment, but look at the gaps incrementally there from John Ellen right down to Vince Peters in 6th position. There's 3/4 of a tenth of a second. That's how close it is in that region of the standings. So that puts into further perspective just how quickly Tiber has gone in this session, and he did improve, by the way, on his own lap time there. Wangshi Lin also joins them now in 6th position. Patrick Thompson too. Times are tumbling here a little.
Yeah, but these are genuinely the last laps of their sessions. They're running into the, not just into the clock, but into their required laps. This is the last one from Vince Peters, who's done slow lap, fast lap, slow lap, fast lap, 109.621. He will, at a bare minimum, want to move onto the front row of the grid. Needs to improve by 0.2 of a second. By the way, Alexander Tiber did improve and set a 194, absolutely flying around Oulton Park. As back up Deer Leap onto the start finish straight. Vince Peters is going to cross the line, and is there going to be improvement? Yes, there is, up to 3rd position.
He needed that. He needed to get close to Tiber, and ideally needs to beat Tiber today as well. The gap in the points currently at 49. That's quite some difference over the course of the season, so he'd like to get that down a little bit over the course of the day. Patrick Thompson in between those two at the moment, though, and Peters seemingly carrying on for just a bit of practice from what I can see. I'm not sure he's got any laps remaining to actually count, but I suppose he's thinking that, well, might as well use this as a bit of practice time and get up to speed, because clearly I'm not up to the speed of Alex Tiber.
Yeah, keep your eye on the prize, and just I guess try and push to the absolute limit. I guess, I don't know. I think the problem there with Vince Peters, probably less so is about the amount of pace that he's got, but more so potentially the initial banker lap time for him, because it was obviously in the middle of the pack, wouldn't have been good enough, and so he was thinking of like setting us maybe that second fast lap time for him was maybe a little bit too safe as Dario Dills pulls off the circuit. Vince Peters is the only one driving around. I believe everyone has finished all of their lap times except Hafez Arslan, who's obviously at the rear of the field, but as you were saying, having the issues.
Yeah, and said himself just before this qualifying session that he's out for the day about 10-15 minutes ago. So that's a real shame to see for him. But yeah, clearly Peter's the only one who wants to take the chance to practice. Now, Sarah Dove and Noor Hendricks head out now too to utilise this last minute of the session. But clearly, I mean, maybe you're right about Peters. He was a bit too sort of careful on that last lap out on the circuit in the qualifying session, the last one that counted anyway. But I mean, do we really think that he could have beaten Alexander Tiber even if he had gone that little bit quicker, taken a few more risks? I think that would be a stretch. He might have been able to get onto the front row, but no one surely was beating Tiber.
Yeah, but then I'll tell you what, I'm a little concerned about this second race coming up. Obviously, the first one, I'm sure Tiber's going to be eyeing up the victory. He's going to be trying to run away with it. Fair enough, each their own. That second race, where it's going to be a full reverse grid around here, it is a tight circuit, and there's no really extensive braking zone to fire one down the inside, except maybe a lodge corner, but it's so easy to cover off by pulling over to the inside. So it's going to be a very tricky one for them to work their way through. They're going to deal with that though in after a race, which at the moment Tiba's the one in control of.
Yeah, and he will hope to take control of from the very start. Now, who can stay with him, I think, is going to be the first question here in this race. I think there's a noticeable gap from 10th to 11th position. Nearly 4 tenths in there. In the midfield is a surprise. So I wonder whether that is going to really make a difference in this race and whether that will make the group. We'll see who can stay with Alexander Tiba, though. That will be the big story.
Before we get the 25 minutes then onto the clock, let's take a look at the starting grid. Alexander Tiba starting from pole position alongside Patrick Thompson, who moved his way up onto the front row in the dying moments. Vince Peters up to 3rd position in all of that. John Ellen behind with Louis Bilicki, and of course Daniel Muth, who was up there in practice, couldn't quite replicate it in the qualifying session, which I think he'll find fairly frustrating. The Dura Academy driver of Alessia Bender up in 7th position with Yanshai Lin in 8th. Nazadati and Franco Sanchez Buckley, Mike Barber and Sarah Dove inside the top 12 before we move on to the 3rd page, the penultimate page, as we get Simon Stutschko in 13th spot. Sophia Arenwen, of course, starting from 14th position with Luca Munro, Noor Hendricks, then Tango de Kock, and of course Mike Plug down there in 18th spot. The last one on the grid will be Dario Dills, of course, with Michael Haveldarsen not taking it to the start of this race due to technical problems. So 19 drivers on it. Does Tiba win?
I think so, but I don't think it's going to be quite as clear-cut as that qualifying maybe suggests. The slipstream will keep everybody close together, and as long as they're organised behind, as long as they don't start fighting for second place immediately, then he will be challenged here, I reckon.
Yeah, indeed. Obviously, great to see us coming to the finale of the main season, of the qualifying season, before we go into that season finale, of course, at the Nürburgring, which will be a very, very, very different style of race to what we're going to get here. So drivers trying to get their eye in for that, trying to get prepared for that, trying to build up race experience for that. It's going to be very, very interesting. I think Patrick Thompson's maybe got a chance of attacking. The thing is, if you're going to attack round here, you've got to do it early. You've really got to do it down into Old Hall on that first corner of the circuit.
Yeah, I think so. And you've got to be right on it from the very start for a driver like Patrick Thompson to try and win here. So it's not out of the realms of possibility. He has had a good last couple of rounds, I should say, after missing the first 3. Good to see that he's now here for the second half of the season. He's been making an impression since being here as well, so can definitely challenge the likes of Tiba. In fact, only lost 8 points during the last round. That shows you just sort of how close they've been, or were indeed, at Rudskogen.
What side of the grid would you want to start on, inside or outside?
Definitely the inside for here. But you want to be on the inside for, or the right-hand side for almost any of the corners around this layout.
Yeah, but I reckon, if you're on the outside, for one, you can overly commit. You can send it out wide. Obviously you might get slowed down if you push it a little bit too far. But I reckon with the outside, you've got a little bit more you can work with. I don't think starting on the outside is necessarily a bad thing, and that is where Patrick Thompson will obviously be starting. Anyone with an even numbered position, we're starting from the left-hand side that we're looking at here, of course, left-hand side of the grid, and it is underway then here at Oulton Park. It is, of course, Alexander Tiba starting from the pole position and is already comfortably clear of the pack behind, as things are getting very dicey into that first corner. Patrick Thompson obviously trying to fend off the second place driver for Vince Peters, who was trying to find his way past and all of that, and does indeed fend them off as we begin the dive down the hill. A couple of looks for the likes of John Ellen behind, and we've got plenty of side-by-side working our way down into the Islop chicane.
Here we go into Knickerbrook as well. They'll finally just filter their way through, but it's not quite over. There's someone in the grass in the background too, I'm afraid. But it looks like for the leaders, they've gotten off to a decent start. John Ellen lost a couple of positions and was flashing his lights about it as well. This battle here in the mid-pack is certainly going to create a front group. This is the fight for 10th place. The top 9 are all ahead of these guys by some distance.
Alessia Bender's had a great start, obviously going on the attack. Obviously, maybe moving up the single position. There was a look to the inside. That was, I'm not sure who that was actually, trying to work their way past. It's looking down in the mid-pack as they're all trying to fight their way through. Again, more flashing of the lights back here. Yeesh, I think there are some unhappy drivers on this opening lap of proceedings, but it is going to be Tiba leading from Thompson, then Vince Peters, Bilicki, and of course John Ellen inside that top 5 running position.
Yeah, truck drivers do tend to be unhappy sometimes. So there has been a bit of that going on so far. John Ellen was one of those flashing the lights, and then there's a little bit more going on in that battle for 10th position. Still side by side between Stutzko and Aragon as well for 13th and 14th position all the way back there. But that was my concern for these guys in the second position. Are they going to let Team get away because they're too busy fighting for second? Well, unfortunately, it's happened back here. Michael Haflinson, by the way, has decided that he can connect to the server, and he's here all of a sudden. Unfortunately, though, caught up in all kinds of shenanigans at the back of the field. There's another spin out of the Rudskogen.
John Allen's dropping back, so it was Sophie Aragon who was the one there. So there was a bit of clearly some fighting and stuff that was going on between themselves and Stutzko. John Ellen is now backwards and dropping down the order. That was the kind of chaos I was expecting on lap 1. It took us until lap 2 to see it, and then we got 3 basically in a couple of corners, riding down now into the final corner. Of course, this is the look to the inside from the. I was going to say, is that Alessia Bender?
Yeah, it is Bender. Yeah, down the inside of Mike Barber into the final corner in what I would describe as very similar liveries, somewhat very similar shades of blue, along with another blue car leading this line, Daniel Muth.
Yeah, it looked like, sorry, it's the ones. It looked like it said 77 on the side. I was thinking it'd be like, who's that? We don't have a 77 on the grid. That's why I almost thought it was Sarah Duff for a second then, being a 177. It's a very long, see what I mean?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, they are shaped a little bit oddly, I would describe, but there we are. We've established it's Bender by the looks of things. And Sarah Duff, by the way, now we mentioned, just went off the road, I think, through the first corner to drop a place and a couple of seconds, I'm afraid. So that's down to 12th place now for the car actually numbered 177 on the side.
Indeed, obviously we're going to get plenty of tight fights, including right at the front of the field, because Thompson is keeping Alexander Tiber at within reach. Let's put it that way. 0.3 of a second between the top two, and of course plenty of fights happening up and down the order, including you can see there just in the distance, plenty of looks going down into that final corner. This is a look back up the order to our race leaders: Thompson, Alexander Tiber, Vince Peters, of course, just keeping in tow. Peters not able to really jump in it. Almost had a look to grab second position on that first lap, but like I said, the outside run, as long as you're alongside, the outside run through T1's absolutely fine.
Yeah, you can get there. I just get concerned with running on the left-hand side around this layout at all, to be honest, because there are so few left-handers around this circuit. I mean, there's this one that's coming up right here. There you go. And then what else is there? There's that run down the hill, of course, at Cascades, I guess. But other than that, it's very much a right-handed corner basis. A couple of moves to the left here too, but not too beneficial to be on that side of the road. So we'll see where these real overtaking opportunities come into it, because so far it's just been the first 5 minutes. It's been about taking the chances when they arise in front of you, and less about well thought out overtakes.
Lynn trying to get their way past Daniel Muth, of course, this one being the battle for that 5th position or 6th position, as you can see. Oh, sorry, no, never mind. It's because they've recently been passed by Alessia Bender. It's all right, I'm with it. Don't worry, the IQ's sometimes working in there. Alessia Bender working their way up the order into 6th position. Daniel Muth about a second clear of all of this one. Bender's got some good pace then to work their way up the order. It's already picked up a couple of positions in all this, but has been, I think it's mostly because they've been embroiled in fights. I think the driver who's made up the most spots was probably Mike Barber, who's up 3 from the race start.
That's a good start for him, and it's all about sort of making that next group, if you like, but getting into the group that's just ahead of the one that you might have started in, and trying to work your way through as a result of that, because now that Barber's here, he's got a chance of a top 5 here, although Daniel Muth is starting to get away from those others in that second group on the road. It's not all about slipstream though, of course. You do need the speed as well, as Balicki is currently finding out in 4th position, can't quite hang with it for the moment.
John Allen's just found their way, so clearly cars back on the road and stuff, has found their way past Luca Munro, but I think might have been told by race control about something, and has had to drop back behind both Munro and Michael Hafler-Darson. So dropping back now into 16th position on the road. We've still definitely got this battle for the race victory between Tiber and Thompson. Do you kind of reckon though that maybe Tiber's kind of keeping them up? Just at arm's length, just controlling the race from this scenario, and not maybe overly pushing, I guess, right now?
I'm not sure, because what I saw earlier on in the first 3 minutes of the race was that Alexander Tiber was trying to get away from Thompson and the rest, and it was working to a degree. The gap was around half a second after both laps 1 and 2, but after that, the guys behind have caught the slipstream. They've been able to close in a little bit as a result, and it seems that they've slightly improved in terms of their own lap times as well. And now they're back on terms again. Now, I reckon Patrick Thompson just clipped the grass there on the way into that latest right-hander, and so unfortunately got himself into a bit of trouble. But I don't think Tiba's kind of waiting here, because I don't really see the point in backing off at this stage. I mean, it's surely not one of those races where you can really need to save tyres. Look at him trying to break the slipstream now. He's definitely trying to get away from Thompson. Now this opportunity has been presented.
Yeah, the move you just saw on screen was Michael Haveldarson working their way past Luca Munro, so dropping down the order like a certain Mercedes driver is at the moment. We're not going to talk about this one, as we'll keep an eye on this battle for the victory, of course. Still, it's within 0.2 of a second. It is tight. The thing is, it's at the point where, you know, no mistakes can be made. But let's be honest, we don't really expect a mistake, particularly from the top three in this session, between Alexander Tiba and between Patrick Thompson, as we drop right the way down the order. This is Munro again. Oh, coming straight back over the nose there of John Ellen.
Giving the space in the end on the exit there, and John Ellen surely will be through. But this is getting heated now towards the back of the field, as those who have maybe had a couple of problems so far today start to battle it out. Down Cascades, John Ellen works his way through, and you'd expect that as well, although he does go off the road. Gets back on again, and not sure that's a line that iRacing's going to particularly enjoy, actually, but anyway, he's just about kept it onto the road as Ellen, and now he's up to 15th position, and you expect him to sort of try and work his way through for the rest of this race now, because he, of course, did qualify a little bit better.
Yeah, Monroe will be able to keep the rest of them at bay, because it's a fair gap back to Tango de Kock and, of course, Sophie Aronwen back up to the race lead. And, well, it was 0.3, it's 0.2, it's now under 1/10 of a second. Patrick Thompson's absolutely flying. I'm going to just have a little look at their lap times. This is why I think this might be a bit more of Alexander Tiba controlling it right now, because the last lap time was a 1:09.7. Now, sure, you could say about qualifying and blah, 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 and obviously the qualifying car, less fuel, more fast, etc. Close going through Hislops. But you wouldn't necessarily expect Tiba to drop that much pace off. Yeah, this car is capable of going faster. In fact, its fastest lap of the race is a 1:09.4. Well, 3:99 would be pedantic.
Yeah, we'll call it that. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say, but I do think that could come down to the difference between race and qualifying pace. It really could. I think, personally, some of those lap times that Tiba was putting down in qualifying were absolutely out of this world, and maybe even he is going to struggle to replicate that over the course of the race, because the others around him are at that same sort of qualifying pace. I know they've got the slipstream, which is helping them, of course, but they're on the pace that they were earlier on. And so I don't know. Maybe it's difficult to say. I think we're going to get our answer in the final 10 minutes. But as I said earlier, I don't see the point of him waiting to break away. I think he might as well try and break away from the start and just lead every lap home.
I do agree with that. I don't fully understand why you would try and control this race, but then I don't understand why you'd be running 3 or 4 tenths off of the capability of you and the car. The other reason why I say it is because he's not defending anywhere. Not really. You could say he's maybe holding the brake a little bit longer, going down into his lops to try and make sure you're actually putting it up to the apex rather than maybe taking the fast line. Same as at Druids. You don't want to leave that inside slightly open, because it's the kind of position where Patrick Thompson will try and come through. But realistically speaking, I don't know, there's something not quite adding up with Tiba's pace right now. So we'll take a little bit of look further down the order, and woof, a little bit of contact.
Yeah, and
we'll take a look at that.
Moment out on the outside of the circuit. Helpful bit of runoff there, of course, on the exit of that corner, because you meet up with the real track, the Grand Prix layout, and I suppose the other layout too, which that part of the track features on. But there you go. Not ideally where you want to be, down there at the bottom of the hill, as these three continue to just run line astern here. It's not a case of can't overtake, I don't think, for Patrick Thompson. There's plenty of chances, but just a case of don't really want to make this move at the moment for whatever reason. They bounce over the curbs. He's almost getting pushed here as Alexander Tiba through the double right-hander, now through one of the few lefts, and this all-important right-hander now to give you the run up the hill towards Druid's corner eventually. This gap is very much one of those where you could see a move if there was a desire to go through here, but there clearly isn't any.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, is that when Patrick Thompson's getting closest in this, where the highest risk is coming down, towards the Hislop chicane, basically, as you've been calling it, turn 3. That's where the biggest risk is. Now, trying to take a bit of a defensive line is Alexander Tiber, basically saying, look, stop having a little look, but obviously they're all racing and stuff. We're approaching the halfway mark. By the way, I think Hafler's has been feeding you porky pies, mate, because he's been flying. He's up to 13th position right now, and I've not spotted a single. No, I'm not going to say actually.
Were you about to say you've not spotted a single internet problem?
I don't believe in the commentators, guys, but I thought even that was a little bit rich from me. But yes, that was exactly what I was going to say.
That's asking for trouble, that really, isn't it? He said earlier on. He said it in the Discord for this series that he was out of the event just before the qualifying. He was clearly having to fix some things during practice or work through some things during that session, but then said around a couple of minutes before the end of qualifying, not long enough for him to actually get out there, but long enough for him to be able to grid up in time here, that he is in finally and will be there. He was so sure that he wouldn't be racing that he didn't even attend the briefing, which he has been excused from.
Yeah, fair enough. It's good sometimes to get that sort of excuse from race control to be like, yeah, okay, you've had problems. You've not been able to qualify, so that's kind of like that's enough of a penalty. Let's be honest, they don't really like it when they're going to miss. This could be a move, by the way, because Patrick Thompson, as they come up Deer Leap, is as close as he has been on that run down into turn 1. It is less than a tenth of a second between the pair of them, but does not fancy a look going down to that first corner Oulton. Both of them are going to run out wide after going after the apex fairly early. But this move is close. The problem is you can't really make it down into turn 3 purely based on the fact that it's a little bit too tight down here. It's really got a one-line corner.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is very much I love how we're just calling it turn 3 now. It's not actually.
Yeah, we're going to commit to it.
No, but anyway, I think that's what I'd call it.
What is this name then?
It doesn't really have one.
Is it going to be called Foster's because we're on the Foster's layout?
Maybe. I can't see any track map anywhere that labels it, so I don't know personally, but I'm just going to go with turn 3. I think it is possible to go down the inside, and I actually think it's one of the better opportunities to overtake around here, because if you think about it, it is the biggest braking zone in these cars at this layout. It's downhill, of course, which extends the braking zone just a little bit further, and the way that you pull the car to the left to open up the 2 corners really does sort of open the door for a dive. So if you are fancying it in the last 10 minutes, then it's very much open there for you, but surely Patrick Thompson is going to be almost forced into a move here soon. This front 3 are getting closed up more and more. Vince Peters is beginning to put that pressure onto Thompson, and that's surely going to force the middle driver here to do something.
This group, they're all really slowed down. I mean, the last lap time was a 109.9 for Thompson, was a 109.9 for Tiber as well, a 109.6 for Vince Peters. They've slowed down a significant portion. I just don't see that being tyre wear. I know you probably lean on the front left around there quite a lot, but these tyres should be absolutely fine for 25 minutes. And certainly when we're only talking about 15 minutes into the race, yeah, I know they've been close to battling on various occasions, but I don't know. Bit more of a gap now between Thompson and Tiber. The gap now opens up to around about half a second. If Vince Peters even has so much of a look into Druids, Tiber will check away.
You would think so, and that's the real difficulty when you're in third place here. Maybe that's why Thompson is waiting so much, because he thinks, well, I'm in the prime position here. If Peters attacks me, then we're both not going to win this race. So you might as well bank on that and try and play on that a little bit to apply the pressure or sort of keep the cards close to your chest and make sure that you're still holding the advantage here in this group. I'm surprised we haven't seen any definitive move from him just yet, though.
John out of the race. Unfortunately, the number 4 car is done. Not 100% sure as to why or what has happened to him, but obviously had the issues earlier on. Qualified in 4th position, was running in 14th position before retiring from the opening race of the evening. So we'll have to go again. And with it being an invert all, that means that he'll be starting from the reverse grid pole position for the next race. Out wide now goes Patrick Thompson. Now this does whiff a little bit more of let me get my right foot planted from Alexander Tiber.
Maybe, but is it? I think partly it's also coming down to mistakes from Thompson. Saw him clip the grass on the way towards Knickerbrook there in the previous lap. He's pushing hard now, though, of course. You saw him run wide there through Druids, was really making the absolute most of that corner. Now into the final turn. He's got to hope that Vince Peters tries to help him here. Just bump me when you can. Try and stay right as close as possible to give me that little bit of a reverse draft, if you like. Push me along a little bit and get close to Alexander Tiber. Is that really making the difference here? Well, we'll see. But he's got to get closer now. He is going to run out of time if he's not careful.
I can't believe you doubted my idea of maybe Tiber's controlling it a little bit, because he's been running basically in the 9s for quite a while. 6s or 7s, 9s. Now sticks in a couple of 5s back to back, show that the car is plenty fast enough and probably even got more pace in it. Just trying to hold that margin, but Thompson's trying to drag that one back down with the final 8 minutes looming in this session. Again, lap times around here, they're generally around about the 69, 70 second margin, so there's still plenty of laps to deal with, plenty of times to catch. Like I say, as soon as Vince Peters looks, it's effectively done, as we'll see. Daniel Muth, by the way, has dropped right the way down the order, so not 100% sure as to what's happened.
He has. That must have been out of Knickeborough, as Alessio Bender and Wang Xiling have both gotten through into 4th and 5th, and they're fighting between themselves now actually into the final corner. It's Bender who's having to defend on the inside here. Lin with maybe an exit, but no, there's not quite the run that was required onto the front straight on that occasion. But yeah, Muth will be disappointed with that, because he's been heading that group for some time now.
Yeah, obviously started 6th, now running 6th is Daniel Muth, but I think he'd even be disappointed with how that one has happened. I did say earlier on in the race I didn't think Luca Monroe would be dealing with very much, but I think it's dropped back maybe a couple of spots. I thought it was going to be a tighter margin between himself and Noah Hemricks, but I think that's what we were checking out a little bit earlier. A lot of curb being taken there from the driver of Lynn as they head their way through Hislops, now through Knickerbrook, and the rise of the hill, looking backwards from the rear wing of the number 11 of Alessio Bender as we head up Clay Hill now and under the bridge, which was removed when we went here last year, which was not annoying at all. Ha ha ha.
I didn't notice, to be honest.
Yeah, you didn't walk out that far. I was fuming on the Saturday, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's you can't underestimate the importance of these things around a racetrack sometimes. But yeah, it's up towards those difficult final corners where I was hoping to see a little bit more side by side, but unfortunately we haven't had that so far in the near 20 minutes now that we've been going in race 1.
Indeed, like things have started to calm down, and also the gap for the race lead is out to over a second. And do you know why? That is because Alexander Tiber has just set the fastest lap of the race, a 3:9.0. He is flying now. Told you he was looking after his time, playing with the final part of the race.
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me, but anyway.
Problem.
That's what he has done. I mean, maybe tyres are a factor that you've got to manage over 25 minutes. I personally thought that you could just give these tyres as much abuse as you pretty much wanted for a race of this length in these cars, which are pretty light on their feet anyway, and you'd be fine no matter what way you do it. But maybe you do have to look after them a little bit, and clearly there's got to be some sort of explanation, because Tiber hasn't just been waiting for this moment to do it just for fun.
No. I think it's partly the fact there was a gap already there, as we'll see once again. Lynn looking to the outside of Alessio Bender going into Lodge. Who is that off the road? It is a back marker, I believe. It must be, yeah, indeed. It's Mike Plug, who's the one there over on the left-hand side of the shot. So not full position for this grouping, as Haftardarson is going to get past Nazadati. So from 20th now to 11th, on the cusp of getting inside the top 10 with 5 minutes left to go in this race. Yeah, I think Tiber was probably looking after his tyres for this part of the race, but then also, like you say, it was because there was a gap behind that he then decided that now was the time to attack. That said, he has made a couple of mistakes this lap, and the gap has now been closed back in. Also, because guess who else just set the fastest lap of the race? Have a guess.
Patrick Thompson.
Might well have been.
Yes.
2:9.0, flying.
So he didn't especially get the assistance of Slipstream there. He wasn't that close to Alexander Tiber to really give him that extra bit of speed on the straights. But was that not faster than his qualifying time? It's got to have been close to what he managed in qualifying with very little slipstream. So maybe he has just got it together here towards the end of the race as fuel loads coming down. But that suggests that the tyre wear is not a problem, because now we're all of a sudden going a lot quicker than we were.
that lap time would have been within a tenth of Alexander Tiber's pole time. So yes, definitely would have been faster than his qualifying. Wasn't faster than his practice time. He did set a 2:54 in practice. So again, clearly the car's got pace. Has now dropped back onto a 5:92. I think from what I'm seeing, you can't do too many of those lap times back to back. I don't think the tyres can take it because look, I'll read you out the last 5 lap times from Alexander Tiber. 109.5, 0.6, 0.3, 0.7, 0.7. That 0.3, which was the fastest lap at that point, is the outlier in there. The rest of them have all been in the sort of only basically on an average of about a higher 0.6.
It depends what we're going to put that down to, though, because it could be, as you say, all the tyres can take. Maybe they can't take going that quickly around here, lap after lap after lap. Or is it a driver thing where it's difficult to find the consistency to do that lap after lap? You can't forget that around a circuit that actually isn't used that much. You've got to remember that there isn't that much residual practice, if you like, for these drivers that there might be around other venues, maybe like the Nordschleife if you've done plenty of racing around there. Certain people on this grid certainly will have done.
Yeah, we'll deal with that one in 3 weeks' time because now we're dealing with Cheshire's little variant of the Nordschleife. Yeah, I don't know. If we were talking about league racing, something that like I would be able to race in, then yeah, sure, maybe. Talking about drivers like Tiber and Vince Peters and Thompson and Alessio Bender and stuff like that, I don't know. I don't believe like the concentration and being able to push that many times is really the big thing. There's Hafnardarsson trying to go around the outside of Simon Stichko, going through the first corner and also rejoining the fight is Nazadati. Stichko's going to go backwards, potentially down the field, maybe even extra position because Sarah Dove might try and find their way through side by side as they head their way through Cascades and now down into the braking zone as we get ready for the Hislop chicane. Sarah Dove's trying to go around the outside. That wasn't going to work.
Well, it would give you the inside for the next one, which could turn out to be the winning position, but not on that occasion, I'm afraid. So they'll all get back into line again. Good to see there are still groups up and down the field, and I think that gives us some encouragement for the second race, that there could be a little bit more battling in the midfield. I think the second race is going to be especially an exciting one for those front three, especially who are going to look to work their way through back to a second podium of the evening.
I am going to say it now. I don't think we're going to see drivers on back-to-back podiums. I just don't see it around here. I think it's too tight. I think it's too tricky. It's too technical. Although, Michael Hafnardarsson's done a great job to move inside the top 10. So, honestly speaking, who knows? We'll have to wait and see as once more this fight continues its way down, of course, into that tight chicane as they work their way through Hislops, as Luca Munro has brought the car into the pit lane. Curiously, not sure what's happened with 56.
No, well, I was going to suggest underfueling initially, but that pit stop's going on way too long for that. So we'll work out what that is all about in a few moments' time. Maybe trying to get a better position for the second race, because that's now put him on the front row, but that'll be a bit cheeky. Within the rules, to be fair. So, you might as well. By the way, since you've said that now, I'm going to go for one of the podium drivers getting back to a podium for a double one here tonight.
Look at this in the bottom right of your screen, though. Alessio Bender and Yanxi Lin. This battle was getting very feisty indeed. There was even contact with them running down into Lodge Corner. 30 seconds left to go as the white flag has been prepared. The battle's also happening for the race lead. 3/4 tenths of a second separate first, second, and third as Luca Munro, maybe I think it is, comes out of pit lane ahead of them, as they might even have some lap traffic. So that's actually Tango de Kock ahead of them.
Oh dear, and a car in the gravel here on the last lap, so that's not going to be particularly helpful for everybody here, but this is the last lap now, and with cars battling ahead here, how are they going to affect the leading battle? It's all come down to this at the very end after a race of waiting here. Alexander Tiber all of a sudden's got one lap to defend here, and Thompson's going to have pretty much one chance to make his way past.
Alessio Bender out of this race as well on the last lap of proceedings. So we'll drop down to potentially 17th position. It might be 18th, but it's probably going to be 17th as well as they try and squeeze their way past the lap traffic. Alexander Tiber's going to pull it to the inside. I'm not sure if there's going to be much switches. Looks coming all over the place from Vince Peters, who's going to send it in, coming down to Lodge Corner. Contact between himself and the 16 as they head their way down the hill and back up Deer Leap. Vince Peters is going to squeeze his way through in a second position, but it is victory once again from Alexander Tiber as Vince Peters in second and Patrick Thompson denied at the last to grab third position, but still an excellent fight between the top three.
Hearing, by the way, that Alessio Bender was disqualified, presumably for incident points during that race, but we'll get confirmation of that at the end here. What a dramatic finish. Great opportunistic driving from Vince Peters, who managed to get to the outside and make one of the only overtakes inside the top 3 all day.
Not sure what has happened, whether it was to do with the back mark or whatever. Patrick Thompson's just dropped in chat. What an unsportsmanlike behaviour. Shame on both of you. I'm going to assume that it's probably something to do with Vince Peters and Alexander Tiber. Not 100% sure as to why, though. Let's take a look, though, at the provisional results from the first race of the evening here at Oulton Park. Alexander Tiber on top, with Vince Peters working his way through on the last lap into second position. Patrick Thompson clearly very irritated in third position. Yanchi Lin and Daniel Muth obviously involved in that battle throughout the final moments of the race, but they still managed to finish 4th and 5th. Mike Barber with Franco Sanchez-Butley and of course Michael Hatherdarson from the rear of the field up to 8th position. Louis Balicki and of course Naz Adati inside the top 10. That finishes the first page. Onto the second page where we'll see Simon Stichko, of course Sarah Dove, Noah Hendricks, Sophie Aradwen, Dario Dills, and then Alessio Bender dropping down to 6th position. Tango de Kock, Mike Plug, Luca Munro and John Ellen. Reminder, the entire 20-car field will be reversed for this one. So John Ellen will be the one starting from pole position. Then Luca Munro, Mike Plug, Tango de Kock, Alessio Bender, Dario Dills, and of course the rest of them will feel their way through. I am still going to go through. It's fine. I know I've just read them out in reverse order, but we're still going to commit to it. Aaron Wen, 7th position. Hendricks in 8th. Then Sarah Dove, Stuchko, Adati, Balicki, of course, in that 12th position. Then Hafler Darson, what he could do from 13th position from the back of the field, was able to get himself inside the top 10. So maybe there's going to be a special drive there coming in. Franco Sanchez-Butley in 17th position. Then, of course, Barber, Moose, Lynn, Thompson, and then the first and second of the previous race, Vince Peters and Alexander Tiber. Clearly, there is some things boiling over here at Oulton Park, considering the reaction post-race there from Patrick Thompson. He's not exactly pleased, is he?
Well, I'm puzzled as to why, because I didn't see anything wrong with well, it depends who that was aimed at, actually, before I'd say anything else. If it was aimed at Tiber and Peters, I'm really not sure what they did wrong there. All Peters did, especially, is make an overtake and try to, and was successful. All Tiber did was try to defend his lead. I didn't see anything they did wrong.
Yeah, indeed. I don't know. I really don't know. It's a weird one, but so sometimes that immediate post-race thing, you're furious that you've lost a position. I think it's probably more that.
Maybe, yeah. You wouldn't have thought there'll be anything substantial behind it. I wouldn't have thought, but maybe there's something we haven't seen.
Maybe. I'm not going to be able to ask you who's going to be victorious. And to be fair, I wouldn't do that to you, because this grid is going to be crazy. Already taking to the race start and already clearing away into the distance is John Ellen, and has left behind Luca Munro and Mike Plug going down to that first corner. I tell you what, Alessio Bender has already made a big move trying to get down Luca Munro, and there's a spin in the mid-pack right in front of everyone. Well, that's a multi-car pile-up if ever I've seen one.
And we saw almost exactly the same thing at Rudskogen. It was the first chicane on that day. It's the first corner today. Side by side for second position between Luca Munro and Alessio Bender, who's made a good start. By the way, I would pick him pre-race for a race win here, although it's going to be a difficult task for anyone to catch John Ellen in this race already with over a second.
Yeah, trying to work out which the car was that was back with. I think it was Sarah Dove in the middle of the field. To tell you who's been collected by that, though, look at your list there on the right-hand side, and right at the bottom of it, Alexander Tiber, 19th position at the moment. So huge drama there in the for the championship. Look at Vince Peters, by the way. You found him on the leaderboard, yeah? He's in 8th.
Exactly.
8th.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention next. 8th place. What a fantastic start for Vince Peters. Up 9 positions, or 11 positions, excuse me, so far in this one. Side by side again through the final corner between Alessio Bender and Luca Munro. Alessio now finally making his way through into second position, and Munro further down. I think Luca Munro is going to have a difficult second race of generally being overtaken fairly often.
Yeah, but I mean, realistically, like the pace-wise in practice and qualifying was actually pretty fine. 1099 in practice, 110.2, as we'll see with Tango de Kock here trying to wrestle their way through, and now trying to move their way up the order. Of course, currently running in 7th position, losing out to Vince Peters fairly recently, and having a couple more problems as well, it seems, as Stutsko and Monroe. That was what we were seeing the onboard of, and it's Monroe who's dropped back down the order. Yeah,
unfortunately, and that, as I say, that's going to happen fairly often, I would argue, in this race for the remainder. But it's going to be an interesting one to see how those who are caught up in opening lap incidents recover now. Alexander Tiber, of course, down in, was 18th, now up to 17th for the first time. But what a big opening lap incident we've seen that has really sort of shaped the field and the order of this race.
Yeah, indeed. Like I say, it's maybe like turned things around. Even points wise, Vince Peters now with a huge advantage, obviously moving up to 2nd position there. Whoa. Oh my goodness me, that was almost very, very sketchy indeed for Bilicki, trying to get around the outside of Stutsko, riding on board still with Monroe now down the order. Nazadati going through. Oh, there's been contact on the rear end, still side by side as they work their way up towards Hislop. This is very sketchy and could end in tears.
That was VA Supercar stuff on the curves, wasn't it? Right up on 2 wheels there on the inside line. Fantastic stuff, but another pass from Nazadati and a slowdown penalty, I would guess, for Simon Stutsko. Really slow on the exit of the chicane there, I'm afraid, and losing a whole load of places.
Please try and pick your way through all of this and try and figure it all out. Trying to work their way through in all of it, of course, is Vince Peters, who's now the next one to try and queue up and pass Luca Monroe. Much faster on the exit of Druids. Someone is off in the background. That will be Yanshi Lin, as Luca Monroe might lose out here. Dives to the inside, has a little bit of a look on Nazadati. Working their way around the outside goes Vince Peters. Space given by Luca Monroe. And it is going to be Vince Peters working their way up the order now into 4th position.
Yeah, he's clearly on his way to a double podium, I would argue here. He was right up there in the first race, making a great move at the end there for 2nd position. And now in this 2nd race, he is right up there again, making some fantastic overtakes. What a wonderful start from him. But what a great group of racing as well. No! It's all gone wrong immediately. Daniel Muff is getting the fright of his life with VR there on the bottom right of your screen. He'll get back going again now, thankfully. But what a shame to see that group all of a sudden come unstuck.
Oh my goodness. No. Oh, is that a poor rejoin? You can't have an excuse if you got VR on for a bad rejoin, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. I think basically did just come straight back onto the racing line, but I'll hold my opinions until I see that one again.
Yeah. What we can say for sure, though, is that Tanguy de Kock ending up in the grass, I'm afraid, and he drops down even further, back to 18th. To be fair, from that onboard, didn't look like a terrible rejoin, although he did get caught up with someone while rejoining. But as you say, we'll need to see offboard to really figure out what went on there, because it was all very busy in this, and these first 5 minutes have been.
I've looked at it on my own side of things. I can tell you it was a terrible rejoin, straight to the side of Tanguy de Kock. Basically just came straight back onto the racing line. So 0 out of 10 on that one, sorry. As we'll see Louis Bilicki dropping down the order. Alexander Tiber now up into 12th position after working past Dario Dills, going down this circuit down into T1, I believe it was. So clearly some moves still to be made. I think Bilicki having some problems, might be another retirement from the race, but we'll keep our eyes focused and peeled on this battle for the final step on the podium. Vince Peters, I mean, you called it right in the previous race that, yeah, maybe someone can do it. Vince Peters clearly is the one.
Yeah, it all comes down to the start, doesn't it? You mentioned it right at the very opening lap. Already up more than 10 positions is remarkable, and admittedly that was a lot of coming through the crash, of course, but nevertheless, this is what happened to Daniel. Amazing job from whoever was in that green car there to avoid, by the way. And this is going to be slightly less amazing as Daniel Muff makes his way back onto the circuit and then does that. Well,
straight into the car.
Okay.
It's not as bad as firing it straight back onto the apex and it's completely eliminating someone, but it's pretty poor.
I don't know. I'm not 100% sold yet, but I could be swayed. So there you go. Unfortunately, the damage is done for everyone here, and Daniel Murphy is still languishing down in 16th position. Unfortunately, the spread of the field a lot bigger in this second race as a result of everything that's happened.
Yeah, to be fair, it's no shock. We normally actually see that in these second races. You almost kind of assume that the second race, because it's a full reverse grid, it's going to be closer. It's actually counterintuitive. It never is. It's always a lot further apart. It's always a lot more distant because certain people are working their way through, maybe through luck, maybe through judgment, maybe through aggression, and they're working their way through well. I mean, we'll try and take a look at lap 1 once more. There is Sarah Dove, and to be fair, for quite a lot of these drivers, there's just nothing you can do. That crash just happened, and to be fair, I don't think there's much blame. I think from what I saw, Sarah Dove just went for a spin. That, by the way, the driver we're looking at there is Alexander Timo.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out how Vince Peters got through all of this. He is the luckiest man alive, I'm going to say that. Yeah, Vince Peters. I think that was him going straight through the middle of everybody, not braking. He didn't bother getting on the brakes, but he just said, well, I'm either going to die here or I'm going to be a hero. And he has been a hero. So there you are. That's how he's got up into 4th place eventually.
Yeah, I think there might have been just a small, tiny little bit, maybe itty bitty bit of luck through all of that. He did make contact with a few people going through, but nothing major. I mean, you might see some damage, some dents on the number 16 as Luca Munro and Franco Sanchez Buckley battle for 6th position behind all this. But Vince Peters is now trying to find their way back through and onto another podium this season. Had one in the previous race by making a move on the last lap. And clearly irritating Thompson.
Whoa!
But, we now look back at Munro.
He was defending aggressively there from the 1 car. Franco Sanchez Buckley trying to get down the inside at Druid's corner. There's been a lot of defending from Munro so far, and it will continue again now into the final corner. Not being forced into a defensive line on this occasion, but look at the ever-growing queue of cars behind. We've got Buckley and then Strutko in that 8th place. Then Haflidsson, who unfortunately hasn't actually really gained very many places in this second race so far.
No, not quite to the same degree as what he was in the previous one. Got to say, when it comes to defending, obviously, we said before, you can make one move and that's it, and it's got to be telegraphed fairly early, and in that sense where it can't be reactive, as is normal. There's reactive defending and proactive defending. If you're reactive to what the cars did behind. If you're proactive, you're doing what you're doing first, and then allowing them to do what they're doing, whether it's going around the outside or diving around the inside or whatever. 2 different styles of defending, and one of them is bad, and the other one is fine. I wouldn't say it's good, but yeah, defending's hard. Defending's really hard. There's an art to it. Knowing how and when. When is way more important than people think. There is a time to defend. For example, down to Druid's corner, you barely need to defend as here comes Vince Peters finally down to the lodge. This is a corner where you do need to defend that generally, as there is a move in the background as well. Peters down the inside to work his way up into 3rd.
Yeah, I think it's not only the locations on the racetrack that you're talking about there in terms of when to defend, but also context of the race is very important when you're trying to defend as well. This is a move I wasn't expecting to see. There's Peters getting overtaken again by Nazadati for 3rd place, so that will rumble on again. But there is certainly a race context as well when you're getting into defending. In these situations, it looks like these two are fairly happy to fight for 3rd place, because I think they've both realised that any hopes of a top 2 finish are going away. They might as well fight with all they've got for it. Nazadati shoved to the outside curb there through turn 3, and that's Vince Peters finally through, and more definitively so as well. But it also depends if the car is cruising up behind you and you know that there's no real benefit to either of you for having this fight. You might as well not bother defending and let them send themselves down the inside, although those situations are rarer in a race like this.
Yeah, but also the fastest way around a racetrack is by staying on the racing line. Sometimes if you're defending clear air and there's a car length or 2 between you, then you're actually just slowing yourself down. I think sometimes the defence here is a little bit too aggressive here, but going for the up and under. I don't mean that in a term of a legal context. I mean in just the fact that you're losing so much time in doing so. Bit of a bump job coming in as Patrick Thompson now is going to send Franco Sanchez Buckley down the inside to almost lean on the side of Luca Munro, who is yet to put a foot wrong majorly in this race, and is still able to keep this lot behind, as I think maybe we will see a move coming in from Patrick Thompson. He'll try and squeeze his way through going down into Lodge Corner, and will now work his way past Franco Sanchez Buckley, and will be the next one queuing up to pass, or at least attempt to pass, Luca Munro, who seems to be a moving roadblock at the moment for the rest of the field. He's doing a good job. He's not put a foot wrong.
Not so far. More defending there. That's a little bit more what you're talking about. That was a bit of defending fresh air into turn 3, but it's okay. He's gotten away with it. Partly because these three at the back are sort of making a nuisance of themselves with each other at the back of the field now. Patrick Thompson is the one next in line now. Then it's Buckley who's there. Alexander Teeb is in this group now, though. There's the famous red car for him inside the top 10 for the first time this race. There's Patrick Thompson working his way around the outside. If he can get round there, then he'll have another chance into the final corner and have the run as well, which is what you need. And finally, he is into 6th position.
Yeah, the first one to go through. There's a little bit of a look to the inside. Oh my goodness me, Luke Munro sends it in as hard as he can and still pulls it up by the end of the road. I don't quite know how he did that one. A bit of a flashing of the lights from behind. The entire group is going to be getting extremely frustrated as the defensive line now comes down into Oulton, that first corner. We're about halfway through this race now, straight around the outside, and this one should surely be done. And that is the move confirmed by Patrick Thompson.
What's the bets that Munro sends it again into turn 3, though? There's a chance down here if he wants to go for it, and he does have a look at half in attack, half in defence. There's contact with Alexander Teeb and Buckley, who turns across the championship leader, who ends up in the grass. Yeah,
I mean, I think I don't want to be that guy. I think Teeb might have dished some out there and then had some dished back towards him and paid the price. Not saying that's good, fair or anything, just saying that might be a little bit of what's gone on here as once more defensive stuff coming in, of course. That is Stuchko now ahead as they're all trying to defend, and some big moves coming into the inside. Wow, it's a big one from Sarah Dove.
Yeah, it was, and a successful one too, by the looks of it, into Druid's corner. So Teeb's going to have to pick himself back up from all of that, and not a good moment for him at all, I'm afraid, in this race. Vince Peters is making quite a hard work of this overtake here for 3rd place. Can't seem to get away from Nazadati, who's doing well here, and Mike Barber now is caught up too.
I think it's because Vince Peters can't look at the front of that car. It's really dented. I think he really did cop a big whack coming through that earlier on in the race. Now runs wide. I don't think this car is running at 110%. I'll put it that way. Last lap time was a 110.2, and we know this car is capable of running in the mid to low 1 minute, well, 9s basically.
Yeah, I would argue it's very difficult for his car to run at 110%, but I don't think it's even...
That's what, you know, I've worked in the world of motorsport before. I've seen a whole load of cheating, so, you know, you never know.
Okay, that's good.
I'm not actually accusing anyone, don't worry. Don't panic.
Like who?
No. Again, I'm so close to making jokes that I really shouldn't make. It's fine.
Okay, not even running at 100%, though, definitely, as you say. So maybe we were talking about his heroics on the opening lap. Maybe he didn't come out of that entirely unscathed, even if he did come out of it with more than 10 positions.
Yeah, exactly. The car is pretty battered and bruised, and as much as these cars aren't super sensitive to it, they're not exactly running clear. You know, if they've got damage, it's particularly the fact that there's damage to the radiator, which if this race was much longer, if we were dealing with this around the Nordschleife, for one, he would be absolutely done. Because too much time you were on throttle for a long time. Thankfully, it's happened around here. If it even happened at Imola, you're effectively signing your death sentence. You're dropping back to the rear of the field. Whereas in this race, you're kind of relatively fine because there's a lot of there's not that long straights around here basically. Although we'll have to deal with the defence coming in. Nazadati, look at the inside. See, that's what we were talking about there about defending clean air. The fastest line through Druids is going around the outside, so did not defend the inside, which would have been much slower.
Yeah, and if you're making a lunge from that far back, you're never going to have the momentum to make it work off the end of the corner anyway. The outside line is actually quite beneficial for you through the second part of the corner. So if you can just keep your nose ahead through the first part and get the run off the second, then you can actually be clear on the way to the final turn again. But Vince Peters didn't even have to think about getting clear in time. He just knew straight away with the ideal line around the outside on that occasion. So he's made that work, and he's still 3rd, but it's going to be a big defence from him here to continue on with this one. He's certainly got the pace to beat these two, but it's just about whether he's got the car.
Yeah, indeed. Trying to dive their way through. Once again, a bit of a look. The ideal thing for Vince Peters here is if Mike Barber and Nazadati battle between themselves. They've got about 6 or 7 seconds back to Patrick Thompson, who, despite having that margin back, I think is in a less damaged car. Did a 109.9 the previous lap. I don't believe Thompson will be able to close in on all of this, but I think Thompson's going to be dealing with a pretty quiet race until the checkered flag. But if this lot battle quite hard, then maybe you will see the 29 join in on the mix.
Well, if they fight very, very hard, I think it's going to have to take for Thompson. He's a long way back at the moment, although I guess he's probably quicker than them in the current situation that they're in, especially with a damaged car leading the way, or at least what we believe to be a damaged car leading the way in the high 1-minute 9s for now. Thompson can do better times than that and just has done with a 9.7, but considering the length of that gap, it's going to have to be a bigger close than that one for him. Make their way down towards turn 3 now through Cascades, now down to the right-hander. All these different lines they're taking through this sort of double right-hander, if you like, but just trying to turn it into one sort of long arc through there, so you can set yourself up for this all-important chicane and this run up the hill as well. Vince Peters finally having a good time of things because he's finally gapped Nazardati just a little bit.
Yeah, indeed. The gap growing, but which might help if to kind of get you into your rhythm, because you're kind of having to think a lot about what's happening behind. Did break into the 109.9s for the previous lap time. Did Vince Peters has been in the 109s at various points, but again, I still think there have been some various struggles from the car as Mike Barber with a big send to the inside coming into Lodge Corner, and Nazardati trying to reinvent a rallycross track around here, trying to find something going through that final turn.
Well, it was a big dive and a big lunge from Mike Barber, but he didn't need to go off the road. Nazardati wasn't exactly pushed off there, so that's all fair in the end. Just trying too hard around the outside there, I guess, ends up in the grass. But he'll be able to come back from that and hopefully respond to Mike Barber now.
7 minutes left to go in this race, so roughly 6 laps once they've worked their way around, and we should be all right to see a lot of this. The battle for the race victory was kind of done on lap 1, mostly courtesy of the start that John Ellen had. That's why we're kind of leaning towards him being the favourite for this race. We know he's got the pace, qualified 4th position for this one, retired from the previous race, and now has pulled an absolutely exceptional margin on the field. It's not really changed too much back to Alessio Bender, but it's just timed the start to the race very well, and to be fair, caught a lot of them napping from the front like couple of rows. How Alessio Bender was able to come through as well, because he wasn't napping.
Yeah, it's been some good drives from those at the front of the field, and very smart drives, I guess, in other ways as well. So hats off to everyone who's going to be on the podium at the end of this one. I think we now know the names of those 3. Whether Vince Peters stays in 3rd, I think, is the only question here, really. Alessio Bender is a little bit closer to John Ellen than before, but I still don't think that's coming down enough for a battle to really ensue in the final 6 minutes now.
Yeah, there is not long left to go in this event. Not long left to go before the season finale, of course. When we go to the Nürburgring, cannot wait to see that. It's going to be such a different style of racing around here. This has been a bit more tactical, a bit more patient, a bit more this, a bit more that. Whereas the Nürburgring is going to be, it's going to be a lot of slipstreaming. And to be fair, if you've ever watched Moto 3, probably that, as Tiba's going to work past Franco Sanchez Buckley because he's out of the race. Not what's happened to the number 1 car.
I'm not going to... all right, I will have to guess then. I'm going to go with disqualification for incident points on that one, I'm afraid. Just seemed to disappear from the group entirely. Didn't seem to drop any positions beforehand.
I've just rewatched it. If we do watch that incident, I would like to see it back from the exit of T1, because I can tell you something. There wasn't one bit of contact in that.
Oh.
There was quite a few, and
right.
It didn't look very good. I'll say that. Okay. We'll hold fire again. Race control, we're going to have quite a bit they'll need to look at through this one. But yeah, that was it wasn't nice to watch.
Okay, that was sort of in the region of these guys in the bottom end of the top 10. Buckley was a big part of this battle as everyone was trying to get past Luca Monroe earlier. There's less of a train there now. Monroe only with Alexander Tiber and Sarah Dove just behind for the moment. Daniel moved not too far away, but might not catch in time. This was a much larger group earlier on in the race, and where we were getting much of the entertainment from. I thoroughly enjoyed the opening part of this race, actually. The first race was a bit follow the leader in some parts, but the opening to the second race was a lot better.
Yeah, it was. The first race was interesting from a tactical point of view. This race has just been full-on UFC fights. As now Luca Monroe will attempt to defend from Alexander Tiber, put on a good show trying to defend from the likes of Vincent Peters earlier on in this race. Was unable to keep him at bay for too long, but still the likes of Patrick Thompson as well. This time though, he's going to have to defend from Alexander Tiber, one of the fastest drivers on iRacing, going down into the first corner, of course, at Oulton. We'll see what Tiber could do. Probably going to set up for a move going down into your numbered turn, so I'm going to call it Wham Corner.
Well, that one's got a turn two's got a name, but
okay, yeah.
or a number, yeah. But turn three, I'm happy to have that named after me. There you go. Alexander Tiber makes use of it down in the inside there and goes through, and noticeably quicker than most of the other drivers who've passed Luca Monroe today have actually made their way through.
Okay, so watch this. So this is with Franco Sanchez-Buckley, and that's Alexander Tiber behind. So we're coming up towards turn 2 here, where you're going to see the first bit of contact as they come through the left-hander at Cascades. Bosch, there's one. Enjoy that. Hope it tastes good. A little bit of a look there. There's another one. Have a little bit of that. I don't know if there's one here, but there's certainly one here, though. Just drives straight into the back of him.
You naughty boy. Alexander Tiber there will...
That's 3 bits of contact in 2 corners. That's unacceptable.
And was that 12x, maybe? It could have been. So, well, maybe not that many, but it could have been. And nevertheless, even taking the incident points out of the equation, as you say, you can't just run into the back of someone 3 times like that, and you certainly can't run them over like they did it on the exit of this left-hander here and just completely send them around. I know Alexander Tiber's had a difficult race, but it doesn't give him an excuse to do that, so he might well land himself in some trouble for that.
Yeah, big time. I reckon there's going to be a couple of pens heading the way of Tiber after that one. Like, I understand it's been a frustrating race, and I understand that people's lines, particularly at his stops, are different. A lot of people do pull it over to the left-hand side to prepare themselves for Knickerbock, quite a lot more so. But still, if you've made contact with them, doing that it's one. If it had just been that one bit of contact, that one bit of isolated contact and spun around, it is a bit naughty, and you kind of look at it and be like, oh well, you know what, like fair enough, I understand it. But when there's 2 or 3 in there, like that's not cool. But either way, we'll focus on the positives in this race, because Nazadati for 4th position still trying to defend from Mike Barber, and well, they're not going to be knocking at the door from Patrick Thompson, because he's still miles behind. They're not quite able to keep up with with Vince Peters, who's just been able to build a fair margin with 2 laps left to go.
Yeah, and I think he's built a margin now that he'll be able to take home and bring with him the 3rd position in this one. The other 2 just haven't quite had the speed that Vince Peters does, and eventually, I mean, this is the great thing about this car, it does slightly widen the band of speed that you need to stay with someone. You can be a little bit slower than someone and still stay with them as a result of the slipstream around most circuits, this being one of them, of course. Although certainly at the lower end of the slipstream stakes, nevertheless, pace does matter, and that's the thing, that's the difference between this and some other circuits, some other series. For example, if we were at Daytona, for example, on the road course around there, or maybe even at the Nordschleife, what that's going to be like at the finale, it's going to be very, very different, because the amount of speed that you need to try and keep up with someone is a lot lower than you do need somewhere around here, where there's a good balance between being able to keep up with someone, but also having the ability, if you've got the speed, to break away.
Sarah Dove with a bug look down the inside of Stuchko, who just lost out to Alexander Tiber as well. On to the final lap of the race. White flag is prepared, and our race leader is well and truly clear of the field. 3.5 seconds back to Alessio Bender. He's just had a big cruise here around Oulton Park. Fair enough. Yeah,
he's been a fantastic start, a fantastic drive, and a very lonely one as well, but I don't think he'll particularly mind that. This is what happens in this series. If you do get a bad first race, you can redeem yourself in the second.
Yeah, so John Allen, like you say, retired, was the first retirement from the race. So started from reverse grid pole for this one with the full reverse grid. Comes through the final corner, is going to be victorious in the final race of the main season as Alexander Tiber is out of the race. We'll talk about that in a moment. John Allen victorious here at Oulton Park in dominant fashion, 3.6 clear of Alessio Bender. Vince Peters on back-to-back podiums here in Cheshire with Nazadati and Mike Barber rounding out the top 5. What a win that will be for Vince Peters, considering Tiber is out of the race, and I'm going to take a wild assumption that, like we were talking about before, that might be a DQ for points limit excursions.
And he may well have picked up a few of them in a moment where someone else was disqualified, ironically. So that does have its size to it, but that is going to play a big role in this one. In the end, what was last time out a disappointing day for Vince Peters, losing a lot of that gap to Alexander Tiber in the championship. 49 points between them today. They'll probably be pretty even after this round of the championship.
Yeah, indeed. We'll be catching up with some of the drivers for interviews. I'm assuming we'll probably catch up with John Allen. Normally, we try and catch up with the race winners. I'm not sure we'll be catching up with Alexander Tiber, although I think he'll probably have quite a few things to say in all of this as we look at provisional results from the second race. Fastest lap being set by Patrick Thompson, his rise up the order, but John Allen reverse grid pole and makes it Adore Academy 1-2. Alessio Bender second place. Vince Peters onto the podium for the second time. It was second in the first race, third in the second race. Nazadati and Mike Barber rounding out the top 5. Patrick Thompson having a bit of a lonely race after working his way up in the sixth position. It was a tough opening sort of 15 minutes for the race, and a nice easy cruise to the checkered flag for him. Michael Haffel-Darson in 7th place. Might not have even been racing this evening and still took 2 decent results, 2 top 10. Sarah Dove in 8th position, with Luca Munro being moved up inside the top 10 in the final moments of the race, just 1/10 clear of Daniel Muth on the drag race towards the line. Behind all that, Simon Stutschko had a bit of an issue on that final lap. Sophie Aaron went in 12th position before we get to Alexander Tiber down in 13th, potentially DQ'd from the race for, well, he definitely was, I did check it. Went wide going through Knickerbrook and then disappeared from the racetrack. So he is effectively counted as a retirement. Dario Dills in 14th position with Tango de Kock, finishing 1 lap down. Nor Henriks before we get to a slew of retirements. Franco Santos Buckley, Yang Shai Lin, Louis Balicki, and of course Mike Klug, all retiring from this one. It was an exciting race though, Ewan. An exciting couple of races, to be fair. Exactly what we expect to become racing here at Oulton Park.
Yeah, exactly. As I said earlier, the first race was a little bit follow the leader at times, and that's fine because we did have the exciting finale between the front 3 in the end where the hands of second position did change, but it was really in the second race where the racing really came to the fore. Fantastic race and drive from John Allen. Alessio Bender got away from the rest of the field, able to finish 1 and 2 pretty comfortably in the end, but it was about those battles behind. Vince Peters getting that double podium, surviving the opening lap very well, and the battles, especially involving Luca Munro, who was defending for a lot of that race, but so many other drivers involved in that as well, provided us with some great entertainment, especially in that second 25 minutes.
I think the big thing to talk about in this one was I think a lot of drivers were basically at boiling point. You know, we saw what Patrick Thompson had said after the first race. We saw some of the issues there for Alexander Tiber in that one. There seemed to be a lot of, of high pressure moments. I wonder what that's going to be like in a few weeks' time when we go into the season finale. Do you reckon any of the drivers are going to be hanging on to these, grudges and stuff?
Well, let's hope not, but they are racing drivers after all, and generally they don't forget these things, so it's entirely possible, and we'll have to see what happens at the Nordschleife, of course, which I do feel like it's going to be a very different affair to this one. Very different circuit, of course, and a whole different format too.
Yeah, indeed. Can't wait to see that one, of course. Like I say, it's going to be a very different style of racing, which is the important bit. But I'm not 100% sure what different style of racing we're going to get. Because obviously, it's going to be all about slipstreaming when we get to the Nordschleife. And then obviously waiting until we get into the Duttinger Hoa. Yeah,
exactly. But that's in a normal car. I'd say it's like they aren't normal cars. They are normal, but they're a little bit slower than others. I think that presents some opportunities elsewhere around the circuit. I don't think it's going to be about all waiting for the back straight. I think to a degree there are going to be other chances because while there are flat out runs that you don't really think about in some of the faster cars, you do certainly have to think about them in these because you can't forget that you're on these straights for a bit longer.
Now, I'm not sure we are going to get an interview from either of our race winners, but we will get someone who was defending a lot, was actually on camera quite a lot in that race, because Luca Munro's here. Hi, Luca. How was that one for you? That looked pretty tough out there.
Well, it was certainly better than the first race. Oh, am I muted?
You are not muted. You are talking.
Okay, it said it on my screen that I was. Anyway, yeah. First race couldn't have gone worse. Completely got too greedy getting into the barrier, trying to like put the corner as much as I could. And then at the start of that second race, it was, I have no idea what I'm doing. Everyone just coming up behind me, dive bombing me, and I'm getting out of the way because I'm a coward. But right at the end there, with, was it Daniel? We got past an alien driver, I can't remember who it was, and just got into the line, and man, I'm sweating. That was, I'm sort of breath right now.
Yeah, these races are tough at the best of times when you're effectively treating it like a pack race, especially around a circuit like this at Oulton Park. It's a tricky track, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing. Every track up until now with regards to ownership, I only just recently got Hockenheimring and Imola, but I didn't get them in time to do the NGK NTK ESPORTS rounds in the season. And I don't really like Rudskogen, which is another free track. So Oulton Park's one of my absolute favourites. And yeah, in any car, for the most part, it is just a treat to drive, even if it is not the layout that I'm used to. But I must admit that fling into turn 3 and 4 is quite special when you get it right. Like, you're always on the ragged edge.
Certainly is. So what can we expect from you in the season finale?
Well, I don't know if I've qualified.
Well, I'm pretty sure you're in the top 40 in the points.
I mean, I assumed it was a round by round base. Okay, well, I guess I am then. You can expect me to be there. I can't promise anything more than that.
No worries. Drivers don't read the rule books. We've heard it here first. Luca, thank you so much. Like I say, hopefully we'll see you in 3 weeks' time. Who knows? Maybe I've read the rule book wrong. Who knows?
I hope so.
Right. Cheers, Luca. So there we go. That's that one all sorted then. And now it's all a bit of a waiting time until we go racing at the Nordschleife. And do you know what? This round has not given us any indications to who the favourite is going to be between really between the likes of Vince Peters or Alexander Tiber to take victory was, because those two, oh wow, they've had a crazy season up until this point.
I think it's been one of those seasons that's been very, very consistent actually between the two of them. For the most part, until we got into these last 2 rounds where Vince Peters at Rudskogen didn't have a very good time of things, and now today Tiber has lost out a little bit and will have dropped quite a few points, and that feels weird to say considering the first race that he had, but it doesn't really matter if that second race all falls apart. Vince Peters will certainly gain points on the day as a result, so who knows who the favourite is there. I would put them pretty much at 50-50. If you had a gun to my head though, I think I would pick Alexander Tiber for a victory at the Nordschleife. I just think that he's been a little bit more consistent over the course of the season, and I think that the problems that he had today were a little bit less in his hands than some of the problems that Vince Peters has had throughout the season so far. For example, the penalty he got at Rudskogen was entirely of his own doing off the start by overtaking before the line on the very start of the race. That resulted in a penalty for him on that day, whereas today Tiber got caught up in the lap 1 incident, which started way before him, of course.
Indeed. That is us done, though, for the main season. We'll have to wait and see how things are going to go on when we get to the Nürburgring, of course, at the start of April. It's going to be a crazy one. About 3 weeks' time before we get there, it's going to be a very different style of racing. Going to be a lot of slipstream, a lot of overtaking, I'm sure, and we will crown our champion there. That is us done, though, for the main season here in the NGK NTK Esports Cup. Of course, from myself, Elizabeth Davey, from Ewan O'Leary, and of course, from our broadcast director, Hugo Luis. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you in 3 weeks' time when we wrap up this whole journey. See you then.